I saw the way he looked at my china cabinet before he looked at my son. That was the moment I knew. But by then, the wedding invitations had already gone out. My name is not important. What matters is that I am 63 years old. I have lived in the same house in Western Virginia for 31 years. And I know what it looks like when someone is calculating the value of a room. I spent 22 years as a property assessor for the county. I have walked through thousands of homes. I know the difference between a person admiring your grandmother's clock and a person pricing it. My son Everett was 34 when he met her. I want to be careful here, because I spent a long time being angry, and anger makes you say things that aren't precise. So I'll be precise. She was not obviously terrible. She was pretty in a careful way, the kind of pretty that takes effort and discipline. She laughed at the right moments. She remembered small details, my preference for chamomile over black tea, that I didn't like overhead lighting. Those things registered with me as kindness at the time. Later I understood they were data collection. Her name was Gretchen. She was 31. She worked in what she called financial consulting, which I later learned meant she helped wealthy clients restructure assets. That detail matters. Hold on to it. Everett called me on a Tuesday in October to tell me he'd met someone. I could hear it in his voice. That particular softness that only happens once or twice in a man's life. His father had that voice when he called his own mother about me 40 years ago. Everett's father passed 11 years ago. Pancreatic cancer, 6 weeks from diagnosis to the end. We had a good marriage. I want you to understand that, because what comes next is not a story about a bitter widow. It is a story about a woman who had built something over 63 years and watched someone try to dismantle it with a smile. I own the house outright. After my husband passed, I also inherited a small portfolio his mother had set aside. Bonds, mostly, and some index funds. Nothing extravagant. About $400,000, managed carefully. The house itself, assessed at today's market, sits around $380,000. I also have my pension from the county and Social Security. I am comfortable. I am not rich. But to someone looking at the surface, I probably appear richer than I am. Gretchen came to Sunday dinner in November. She brought wine. A specific label, not just something grabbed from a shelf, which told me she had researched what I might like, or researched what would impress me. We sat in the living room before dinner, and she looked around slowly, the way someone does when they're trying to appear casual but aren't. Her eyes stopped on the fireplace mantel. On the oil painting above it, a landscape my husband commissioned from a local artist. Nothing valuable to anyone but us. But she didn't know that. "That's beautiful," she said. "Is it original?" "It is," I said. "Do you collect art?" I told her no, just that one piece, sentimental. She nodded and moved on. Everett was in the kitchen opening her wine. Dinner was pleasant. She asked thoughtful questions about my career. She touched Everett's arm the way a woman does when she wants you to see she is attached to him. I watched and I noted. I wasn't alarmed yet. I was simply watching the way I always watch. She came back for Christmas. By February, she was staying on weekends. In March, Everett told me they were thinking about buying a place together. And he mentioned, lightly, in passing, the way you mention something you've already decided, that they were considering a property about 40 minutes from me. "Close to you, Mom," he said. That was important to Gretchen. She said families should be close. I thought that was a kind thing to say. I noted it down in the column marked kind things she has said. The first real flag came in April. We were having lunch, just Gretchen and me. Everett was at work. She had suggested the lunch herself, had said she wanted us to have time to get to know each other properly, woman to woman. I appreciated the gesture. We went to a restaurant in town, and somewhere between the salad and the main course, she asked me what my plans were for the house. "Plans?" I said. "Long-term plans," she said. "Whether you'd ever thought about downsizing. Some of my clients find that once the kids are grown, a large home becomes more burden than benefit. From a financial perspective." I looked at her. I kept my face even. I have a good face for this. Years of property disputes will do that for you. "I love my home," I said. "I intend to stay in it." She nodded like I'd said something interesting. "Of course. It's a beautiful property. The lot alone must be worth quite a bit in this market." I changed the subject. But I filed that conversation away somewhere deep and quiet, like a document you don't need today but know you'll need eventually. The second flag came in June. Everett and Gretchen came for the weekend, and on Saturday morning I found her standing in the hallway outside my bedroom. She said she was looking for the bathroom. The bathroom is at the other end of the hall. past the linen closet clearly marked by the nightlight I have kept plugged in for 30 years. My bedroom is not past anything. It is at the end of a short hallway with nothing beyond it. She had no reason to be there. First door on the left, I said, pointing back the way she'd come. Of course, thank you, she said, and smiled. That night I moved the folder I keep in my nightstand, insurance documents, the deed, account information, to a locked box in my closet. I don't know why I did it. Instinct, maybe? The same instinct that made me check the lock on the back door before bed. In August, Everett called to tell me they were engaged. He was happy. He was so happy. His father's voice all over again. I told him I was glad for him. And I meant it, even as something in my chest tightened. The engagement dinner was at my house. Gretchen arrived with a bottle of champagne and a question. She waited until after we'd toasted, until Everett was doing dishes and she and I were alone by the window, and then she mentioned, conversationally, pleasantly, that she had been thinking about estate planning. Her own grandmother had passed without a will, she said, and the family had struggled. She just thought it was worth discussing among people who were about to become family. Everett mentioned you have a financial advisor, she said. Do you find him helpful? I only ask because I work in this space and I sometimes see people who aren't optimally positioned. I'm quite well positioned, thank you, I said. She smiled. Of course. I just want to make sure everyone is protected. Especially you. Especially you. I've thought about those two words many times since. There was something off in them. Not the words themselves, but the sequence. Like the concern was an afterthought placed first. I called my attorney the following week, not to do anything, just to talk. I wanted someone outside my own head to hear what I was describing. She listened without interrupting, and when I finished, she said, "Trust your read on this. You've been reading people for a long time." She was right. I have. By September, I had begun to pay attention in a different way. I noticed that Gretchen always managed to be present when Everett and I talked about money, my pension, my investments, anything concrete and financial. I noticed that she had, over the course of the year, mentioned 3 times that my house would be a lot to manage alone as I got older. I noticed that once, when I mentioned my doctor's name in passing, she had later in the same conversation casually revealed that she knew which practice he was in, which I had not told her. I did not say anything to Everett. I want to explain that decision, because it is the decision people will question most. Everett loved her. And Everett is not a foolish man, but love operates like a curtain drawn across a window. It does not mean there is no window, only that the light is diffused. If I had gone to him in September with a list of observations, he would have heard them as his mother disapproving of his choice. He would not have been entirely wrong, and I would have lost him in the process, which was something I was not willing to do. So I watched and I prepared. I met with my attorney and updated my will. I had a conversation with my financial advisor about restructuring certain accounts so that access required multiple steps of verification. I moved original documents, deed, investment records, everything, to a safe deposit box at my bank. I kept copies at home in the locked box. I told no one I had done any of them. I also hired a woman I knew through the county, a semi-retired investigator who now did background work, to look into Gretchen. Not because I was certain of anything, because I had spent 30 years assessing risk, and this situation had risk written all over it in very small print. What she found was not a crime. It was a pattern. Gretchen had been in a long-term relationship before Everett, 4 years, with a man in his 50s who had been recently widowed and was financially comfortable. They had ended the relationship 2 years before she met Everett. There was no public record of anything improper. But the timing was there, the profile was there. A man with assets, no family closely involved. A new relationship that began within a year of the loss. I sat with that information for a long time. It is not evidence of anything. People date widowers. That is not a crime. But it fit a shape I recognized, and the shape made me cold in a way that didn't go away. The wedding was planned for the following April. A Saturday at a venue about an hour from my house, a restored farmhouse with a barn. Pretty, expensive. Gretchen's parents contributed something, Everett contributed something, and I was asked, gently, kindly, if I would like to contribute as well. I gave $20,000. I want you to know I did that with my eyes open because I still believed that I was wrong about everything. In January, 3 months before the wedding, my son called me. It was a Sunday evening, late, and when I answered, his voice was different, not the soft voice of the man in love. Something smaller, something careful. "Mom," he said, Can I ask you something without you reading into it? I'll try, I said. Did you talk to anyone about our finances? Mine and Gretchen's? I said no because I hadn't. He was quiet for a moment. She mentioned that you'd asked your attorney about updating your will right after the engagement. She said she heard it from someone in the office. I was still for a long moment. My attorney's office is small. I had no idea how that information could have reached Gretchen, but the fact that it had told me something important. She had a line into information that should have been private, and she had used it, not to ask me directly, but to surface it through Everett, to see what I would say. I did update my will, I said. That was routine. I hadn't updated it in several years. Okay, he said. I just wanted to hear it from you. We talked for a few more minutes. After we hung up, I sat in my kitchen with the lights off for a long time. She knew I was watching, and now I knew she was watching back. February passed. March came. The wedding was 6 weeks out when Everett came to see me alone on a Wednesday afternoon. He sat at my kitchen table, and he looked at me the way he used to look at me when he was small, and had broken something and didn't know how to say it. Gretchen thinks it would mean a lot, he said, if you would consider adding her to the deed. As a gesture of welcome, family. I set down my coffee cup. She said it's common in families like ours, he continued, where there's a single parent with property. She said it protects everyone. I looked at my son who I had raised, who had his father's eyes and his grandmother's stubbornness, and who I loved so completely that the idea of losing him to this was something I couldn't hold in my mind all at once. Everett, I said, does this idea come from Gretchen, or does it come from you? He was quiet for a moment too long. She brought it up, he said. But I think she has a point. She is not yet your wife, I said. We are 6 weeks from your wedding day. This is my home. Your father and I built this life. I am not adding anyone to this deed before the wedding, and I would like you to think very carefully about why that request is being made now. He left without arguing, but he left with that look. The one that meant I had confirmed something Gretchen had already told him to expect from me. 3 days before the wedding, Everett called me. His voice had the careful quality again. Mom, I need to say something. Go ahead. I know you don't trust her, and I know you have reasons, but I'm asking you, as my mother, as someone who loves me, to please just let me have this. Please come to my wedding and just let me have this. I said yes. Of course I said yes. I arrived at the venue on a Saturday in April with my heart arranged as carefully as I could manage it. I wore a dress I had bought specifically for the occasion, pale green, because Everett had mentioned once, years ago, that his father loved me in green. I carried a small clutch with my phone and a handkerchief and nothing else. The ceremony was to begin at 4. At 3:15, I was in the garden near the entrance when I saw Everett walking fast across the lawn toward me. His jacket was not on. His tie was loose. He looked like a man who had just remembered something he'd buried. He reached me, and he did not say anything for a moment. He just looked at me the way he had at my kitchen table. Then he said, I found something. He had gone that morning to get his copy of the prenuptial agreement. The agreement Gretchen had said was just a formality, that her attorney had drawn up, that he had signed in February. He'd wanted to reread it before the ceremony, just to settle his own mind. He had read it this time all the way through. There was a clause, buried in the 3rd section, in language that required a particular kind of attention to parse. It stated that in the event of the death of either party, assets commingled or held in joint interest during the period of the marriage would transfer to the surviving spouse. Standard enough. But the definition of commingled assets had been written broadly enough to include property transferred or deeded at the request of immediate family within the 12 months prior to the marriage. If I had added Gretchen to my deed, which she had asked Everett to request in March, 11 months after they became engaged, 13 months before the wedding, that property would have qualified. Everett stood in front of me with the papers in his hand, and I watched his face do something I will never forget. It was the face of a man understanding, all at once, what he had almost done, what he had almost let happen, what he had been carrying without knowing the weight of it. Mom, he said. I'm so sorry. I took his face in my hands the way I had when he was small. You didn't know, I said. That is exactly why she made sure you didn't know. He called off the wedding at 3:45. He told the officiant and the venue coordinator quietly, professionally. He asked me to stay with him while the guests were informed. I stood next to my son in the April afternoon light, and I held his hand, and when the murmur went through the guests and people turned to look, I looked back at every single one of them without flinching. Gretchen did not make a scene. That surprised me, and then it didn't. A scene would have required showing her hand. Instead, she spoke quietly with her parents, and the three of them left within the hour. I have not seen her since. The legal matter was straightforward. The prenuptial agreement had no force because there was no marriage. My deed was never changed. My accounts were never accessed. Nothing was taken from me because I had made sure nothing could be taken. But I want to be clear about something. I did not win because I was clever. I won because I have lived long enough to know that the people who want what you have will always tell you the request is for your own protection. They will say family and security and just a formality. They will learn your tea preference and remember your lighting. They will stand in your hallway and say they were looking for the bathroom. The protection is never for you. The protection is always for what they want to take. Everett is doing better. It has been 7 months. He is seeing a therapist, which took courage for him to admit he needed, and I am proud of him for that. He came to my house for Thanksgiving. He helped me put up the outdoor lights, the way he did every year as a boy. On the last night of his visit, we sat at the kitchen table and he said, "I didn't listen to you. You were in love," I said. "I should have listened anyway." I put my hand over his. "Next time," I said, "you will. I still live in my house. The painting is still above the fireplace. The deed still has only one name on it, my name, and before mine, the name of the man who spent his life building something worth protecting. I still have chamomile in the cabinet and poor overhead lighting and a locked box in my closet that I hope I never need to open again." I told this story because I know I am not the only one it has happened to. I know there are women reading this right now. Women who are watching someone price the room, who are filing observations in quiet columns, who are wondering if they are being unkind or if they are simply paying attention. You are not being unkind, you are paying attention. There is a difference and it matters. Trust what you see, not what you're told to see, what you actually see. That is the only thing in 63 years that has never failed me.